Okay, gang, I don't know where, I know we're missing one, and then the other one I know has got parent-teacher conferences, and I promised her that I would record this and share it with her later. So I'm going to go ahead and record this tonight. So I don't think we're going to be talking about anything that's going to be too confidential and get us into trouble anyway. But just wanted to let you know, just in case of that. Now, Garrett, I can hear Garrett and Shad introducing each other, and or they may have known each other before. But Sonia, nobody may know you. Go ahead. Let's just go around the horn and everybody tell everybody who they are and where they're at.
My name is Sonia Yoder, and I am the principal at Eastland School. And we're a K-8 school, out just beyond Harrisonville is where our school is. It's kind of unique. We have usually just one administrator who's superintendent principal. And this is my second year serving as principal. And then next year I will do the principal superintendent job. So I'm a little bit of a weirdo in this program. I'm not doing anything.
You're not a weirdo. You're a person with a plan. Is what you
I'm not doing anything the way anybody else has ever done it. So.
Good deal. So
it's all good.
Sonia wins the award for drive time today because she's driving in the farthest today. Right. Although, Sonia, it's funny here in a few weeks we've got a person in the program at Savannah, which Savannah's up by St. Joe, and so I get to drive to St. Joe here in a few weeks. So. Nice. Okay, good deal. Garrett, why don't you go next?
Garrett Prevost is my name. I'm currently the principal at Willard Orchard Hills Elementary in the Willard School District. This is my fourth year in this role. Prior to that, I worked in Republic as a teacher coach and then administrator at the high school level. So trying to finish out, this is actually my last class for superintendent certification, and then get that test knocked out and I'll be done.
Yay! Good deal. Okay, Shad, speak softly to us.
I'll try. It's more hoarsely, but anyway. Shad McGuire. Actually, I'm unique because I'm still a teacher.
That's right.
Anyway, so I started this, and they were like, "Oh, it's going to be 3 years to get certified," and I'm like, well, "That's too long." So what do I got to do? Because I didn't want another master's, but I went back and just got another master's instead.
Yeah.
And since they've clocked me or taken care of some of my old master's classes and brought them in, I have to be finished by fall of 2020. So there's no dilly-dallying. Otherwise, I got to take about $2,600 more classes, and I really don't want to do that.
That's right.
I got 3 kids, and obviously you've talked to one of them. And then I've been up by St. Joe several times because my youngest son plays college football, and so we were in Graceland. I've been to Benedictine.
Yeah,
absolutely. Let's see. I've been to Peru, Nebraska.
Yeah.
That's my Saturdays. So
there
anyway,
I've been to Benedictine and Graceland too. I always had students when I was over at Kabul. We'd always have kids that go play up at Graceland and Benedictine. Okay, good deal. Well, like I said, I know we've got 2 other people in class, but I don't know where one of them is, but the other one I know will join us next week. So we'll probably have to do this again next week. Good to have you all aboard here. I think this is going to be pretty painless tonight. I know Sonia's got parent-teacher conference tonight. Chad's not feeling well. 2 people didn't show up, so there's no reason to to drag this out.
I can come up with something if I need to.
That's good. I may need it before the night's over. So, okay. So the primary focus is, and by the way, I'm sorry I didn't get this information to you late enough. It's for Shad's sake that this all happened. It's been on my calendar since probably last spring that this class was on a Thursday night. And then I was out in Denver and I get this email from Shad saying, "Are we going to hear anything from you about this?" And then I realized that it had been, and I'm sure it was switched months ago, but it just had been on my calendar for a long time. This was on Thursday night, and I hadn't even had a chance to go back and hadn't changed it. So sorry I got you sort of late on that. But we're going to go through the syllabus quickly here, and if you have any questions there on the assignments and stuff like that, and I'll go into more details. I know that you all have already clicked on the link and provided me with your contact information, as I mentioned in the email. That's whatever information you gave me, that contact information is how I'll get in touch with you. If you ever need to get in touch with me during the day, I'm always logged into Zoom. So if this same link, if you ever need to talk to me in the day, you just log into Zoom, and if I'm sitting here in the office, it will come up and ring at me. So if you ever need something during the day, just click that Zoom link And if I'm in the office, you can do that, or of course you can give me a call. I'm here almost every day except for Friday. So let me scroll down to the part where we get to the calendar. And of course, that other information you need to read through. On October the 29th, we are not having class. I am going to be up in Kansas City presenting, and I don't think I present until like 3, and I'm just scared to death. It'd be like me sitting in a McDonald's parking lot trying to teach, and I just don't even want to mess with it. So anyway, so like I said, there on October the 29th, it's no class, work on assignments on your own. You're going to have plenty to work on. So just reserve that time to work on some of these assignments that relate to the class, but we will not have class on the 29th. But otherwise, we should meet all the other times, and so that will give us 7 classes rather than 8 when we get through. Like it lists there, and I'll talk about this assignment here in a second, but on November the 5th, I want you to have the policy review assignments due, and there are 8 of them, okay? And please note that I put on there, I said this will take some time. So this is not something you want to wait until the last minute to work on. So at least look at that before we get to like November the 4th and it's due on November the 5th, because that's going to take you a little time to work your way through those. And we'll talk about that more here in a second. But again, there's just some things that if you've reviewed your local policies, it will make it easier for me to discuss it later on. And I want to get those done early so that I can know that you've at least looked at those policies in advance prior to before we just talk about them here in class. And then anyway, you can see there's then the following week on November 12th, and we'll talk about this assignment here in a second, you're gonna have to do 2 practitioner interviews, and I want those due on November the 12th. But any of the other assignments, you can drop them in and get them done when when it works into your schedule. But at least those 2, the 8 policy reviews that you're going to do and the 2 practitioner interviews, make sure that you get them done, like I said, by the respected date that's listed there. One thing that I did mention to you at the last minute, I can't remember, I don't think I've had any of you that my old ChalkUp that I used to use has been bought out by Microsoft and it's no longer free. So I'm out on ChalkUp because I'm not paying to submit assignments. So we're going to use Google Classroom. I know, Garrett, I got an email from you after I sent that login code. Were you able to log in then, or?
Yes, I was.
Okay, good deal. So if you have trouble with ChalkUp or with Google Classroom, you should get an email that I've sent out to you, and hopefully you'll be able to click on that link. But if you have a problem, whistle at me, and there's an actual code for signing up into that Google Classroom system that will dump you into that class. And I just want to make sure it's clear, the only thing we're using Google Classroom for is for you to submit assignments. I'm not using the announcement board. I'm not using any of that other bells and whistles that are in Google Classroom. All I'm going to use it for is for you're going to go into Google Classroom, and you'll see up at the top, I think it says assignments or maybe say classwork. I can't remember what it is. And when you click on that, it will have a link for all the assignments that are required in class, and then you're going to upload them for me. And then that's also the way that I'll grade them. I'll go on and grade them on there, and then you'll be able to go back into Google Classroom and see what my comments were and things like that. But any of those other features on there, I'm not using. I'm only using it for you to upload your assignments, and so I can grade them for you back online, and then you can retrieve them from the Google Classroom account there. And I think when I get through, I think it sends you an email that says that my comments are available and the assignment's been returned to you. But if you haven't had a chance to play with it a little bit, and it's very easy, especially if you have any familiarity with the way Google does its docs and things like that. And by the way, you can use Google Docs to submit your assignment, but you can also use Word, or you can upload a PDF. It doesn't matter. I can grade them any way. But if you are a Google person, it might be easier just to do your assignments in Google Docs and then share them that way. But again, if you want to do it in Word, then upload a Word document or upload a PDF of any form, and I'll be able to grade them on that. And
hey, Dr. Turner.
Yeah.
Can I just switch my email then to my school one, my school Google? If
You
that's how we're
cannot.
gonna do that.
You cannot. Google will not allow that. That's not me. That's Google.
The one that I sent you.
Uh-huh.
I have a school Gmail account, and that all my stuff's in there.
Okay, I'm just saying.
It didn't matter.
Well, I'm just saying is that Google, we had this trouble last semester. That's the reason I know this, is that if you have Google as your school email server, you cannot use that email address outside. What it is that Google shuts it down, is that if you are a Google school and you use the Google email server, it will not allow you to submit assignments outside of your Google school.
Okay.
So you have to use your own personal a Gmail account and not the one that's associated to the school district. So
Okay. No big then.
okay, so you're going to have to log in as that private Gmail when you upload those documents for me. It will not work. We went through that last semester and we couldn't figure it out because I had all the NICSA people, and all the NICSA people were, and then we finally figured out what it was, is that Google will not allow you to submit assignments outside your Google domain. And so if you've got a Google NICSA thing, it won't share with me and I can't see it to grade it. So you're going to need to have a private one, a personal one. Okay. So anyway, I'll go through, and here are the point totals that you'll see there, but we're going to go through and get to the assignments. So if you have any questions about the point totals, you can ask me later. You'll get 50 points a night for attending class. And so you're all getting 50 points. Yay. Then, okay, practitioner interviews and summary, and you can read through this in more details, but I've underlined here the two interviews that you need to do. One must either be a superintendent or an assistant superintendent of personnel or a director of personnel. So that's one. So pick one of those three. It doesn't matter. Sonia, I know that your superintendent is in and out. So I know you've got some partnerships with other school districts, so feel free to do it with whoever you want. I mean, it can be even from another school district. And I know, again, Sonia, this next one will get you too, because you're the principal, so that's not going to be difficult too. But you do need to interview the other interview will be a building level principal. Okay. And so I realize Garrett and Sonia, you guys are already principals, so that'll be sort of silly, but still go through and partner with another person in your district. Garrett or Sonia, reach out to a neighboring school district, and we're going to do two interviews with people talking the specific focus about personnel issues. And as you read through the narrative on what I want to happen in these interviews, again, I've underlined here just our focus of these practitioner interviews are personnel issues. That only. So we're not talking about curriculum. We're talking academics. We're talking specifically about personnel issues, dealing with things like hiring, firing, evaluation, things like that. Okay. So, and I've given you sort of a spelled out format that I want it to be in, that those interviews should be no more than 2 to 4 pages. And then I've got some questions here that I want you to include in those interview processes. And anyway, so those are the 2 interview questions. And again, they are due earlier in the semester. So make sure that you look at that calendar up above and make sure that you get those turned in a timely fashion. So any questions here on the practitioner interviews? Nope. Okay, good deal. Then the policy review assignments. Okay, now there are 8 policies that you're going to review, and you've got some flexibility a little bit because anyway, so I'll let you go through and select, but down there on page 15 of the document, the ones that are starred, you have to do. Okay, so if it's got a star after it, you have to. So for example, you have to do staff grievances and complaints. You have to do professional staff salaries, schedules, benefits, short-term and long-term leave. And you have to do termination of professional staff, and also discrimination, harassment, and retaliation. So you have to do those 4, and then of the other ones listed here, pick 4 more. Okay. Now I put in that note above, these are the first assignments that I want you to work on first. Okay. Depending on which policy manuals you have and how your policies are, these may be very quick or they may be very long. Shad, I'm sort of a little afraid for you because Springfield, although I know Springfield's changed policies recently, so I think you're back on MSBA now, aren't you, Shad, in Springfield? Yeah, so it'll be better than it used to be. This used to be a nightmare policy for Springfield people, but like the MSBA policy would be like 2 pages long, but the old Springfield policy would be 48, so it was a nightmare policy. I think you're going to be better now, but some of these because the policy may not necessarily be very long, literally won't take you 5 to 10 minutes to do. But some of them, like discrimination, harassment, and retaliation, may take you longer. So just be careful on that. Don't wait till the night before to start working on those. And again, I've gone through and told you what I want you to do on these policy reviews. So you're going to pull out your 8 policies, the ones that are starred you have to do. So it says find and review all school policies related to the issues identified below. Write a summary of key issues from the policy that would be understandable to members of the general public. Typically, these summaries are no longer than a half a page in length. So you're really condensing it quite a bit. And by the way, I would do it in bullet form or something like that. I wouldn't write it in narrative form. But some of the shorter ones, it may just be as easy to write a paragraph rather than do it in bulleted form. So basically, you're looking at no more than a page on each one of these, but probably at least a half a page. And we're going to write it in a language, the summary, that would be generally understandable to the public. So like it says in step 3, you should identify the key aspects of the policy that would be considered an administrative practice liability issue. So those things that as you read through it, especially Garrett and Sonia, those of you that have been administrators, you may be reading through those policies and you say, it might be something that jumps up at you say, I don't think we do that way. And that comes up quite regularly, that you'll look at something in a policy and say, I don't know if that's exactly the way we do the hiring process here, or, those, when you see on step 3, identifying those 3 key, or identify 3 key aspects of a policy, and I've give you that number 3. So there could be many, but I only want you to focus on the 3 that I think make you the most vulnerable as an administrator. So it might be things that you may not know that you're doing, or it might be something that if you're doing it, you may not be doing it as well as you feel comfortable with. So again, you're going to be doing that on all those 8 policies, is identifying 3 key aspects that you would consider as potential administrative liability. So I put here, for example, things that would be required by policy that may be difficult to monitor might be an example. If there's something that's spelled out in there, it's like, how do we monitor that we're doing that? I think we're much better at it now than we used to be early in my career. But when we do professional development on sexual harassment, we definitely have everybody sign in, or if they do it electronically, we collect that data so that we can document that it's been completed. But that might be an example. It might be something about in a policy that you're reading and say, how would we ever document that we've done that? And sometimes it's as simple as an artifact. We've got copies of artifacts that we're collecting. Sometimes it's a picture. I've seen that before too, that people are taking pictures to monitor that. But again, as you're reading through his policies, identify 3 key aspects that could be considered as administrative practice liability. And then finally on step 4, and because we're doing this electronically, okay, all of you know that your school district policies are available online. That's the law in Missouri, that you have to do it that way. Just copy that link. I used to have, in the old days, I had people attach the paper copy of the policy. You don't do that. Just find it on the website and then copy that link and then paste it in the document. And if I needed to look at the actual policy for your local school district, I could click on that link and pull it up. So again, it says attach copies of all the policies that you've reviewed as far as that part, but you, in our case, since we're submitting these electronically, just copy that link from your school district policies online to do it. So, okay, so so we're doing those again. You're doing the ones that that have the asterisk next to them, and then so there's 4 of those, and then you're going to pick 4 from the other ones, and so you'll have a total of 8. And then when you log in to Google Classroom, you'll actually see it will have 8 of them listed there. It'll say policy review number 1, policy review number 2, policy review number 3, and so do them separately for me. So again, some of them won't take you more than a couple minutes, but some of them are going to take you some time because of the length of the policy. So any questions on that? Okay. So the interview committee assignment, and depending on how you do this in your district, this may be really easy or it may be really hard. Some districts have a very good detailed interview committee policy or practice together. And some school districts don't use interview committees. And so from that case, you may be reinventing the wheel here. You may have to start from scratch here. What this basically is about is that there is lots of, and I'll try to find one of the more recent, Columbia's had several, the Columbia Public School Districts had several of these recently, is that schools seem to be using hiring committees more and more often as far as the candidate selection, as part of the candidate selection process. But because there is a lot of variety in how it's actually carried out within a district, it in many times opens the school district up to claims of harassment, discrimination, and retaliation, and primarily discrimination. And the point might be, I'll probably share this link with you at some time this semester. Columbia Schools is undergoing now a lawsuit up there related to a African American lady applied for the principalship position at Hickman High School, and she did not receive the position, but she was given a principal's position in another building other than Hickman High School. And so there's a lawsuit that's going on about that right now up in Columbia. And a lot of the details related to it are the way that the people were selected that served on the hiring committee, and how it wasn't spelled out very clearly how that was done. And at least the claim from the person that's filed the lawsuit is that the selection process was biased towards someone that was a white male that worked within the district. And so her claim is that the hiring committee selection process was biased against her. And because it was not spelled out clearly and carried out in the same way every time, that it's opened up some liability for the Columbia School District. So basically what this assignment is to say, we're going to create, I think I put no more than 7 pages, is that, well, let's just read out loud so I can refresh my own memory. It says, many schools utilize interview committees as part of their hiring process for new teachers and staff. In general, these committees are established informally and undergo little to no training prior to the interview process that prepares them to conduct a fair, unbiased, and legal interview of the applicant. Your job is in this assignment is to prepare a white paper of no more than 7 typed pages that will provide the interview committee with professional development for serving on this committee. You can use graphs or tables. That's fine if that will speed things along. And at a minimum, this document should cover these areas. And I've listed some of them. Things like allowable and not allowable questions in an interview process, and things like that. So again, I've just looked through those bullets, and your job is to, like I said, to sort of develop a packet or a white paper that you're going to give to people that agree to serve on these hiring committees so that they can have some professional development, and also to provide you with some documentation down the road in case anybody would ever come up and claim that the hiring committee was biased against their selection. Well, we could use this document that you've come up with to say this is what people were told as far as what they should be doing in their role as a selection process, and it will provide you with some protection in cases of claims against retaliation and discrimination. So, again, in your district, you may already have this developed, and if that's the case, go through and find the district interview committee protocols, and you repackage them for me. You may have to slim them down to hit my 7-page goal, but if you don't have one, then this will be a project to work on for you that may be helpful in your school district. Garrett, up there at Willard, do you guys use hiring committees on selection processes?
Yeah, we do.
Can you think of anything that's given to them as far as a document before they begin the hiring process?
I have personally created a little document for the teams that I lead, but I don't know that we have anything formalized in the district.
Yeah, well, that's a good start then. What you've got there is, again, you might just have to look at my bullets and see if there are things that I've said that you have to put in there. It may not be in there yet, but that's a good idea. How about Sonia? Do you up there, do you all use a hiring committee process?
Nope.
Nope, you don't. So, okay. So you're going to be starting from scratch, but it's
We
a good
will
document
now.
to have.
We will now.
Well, it's a good document to have anyway. Even that thing on on what's an allowable question and what's an allowable question. I'm going to turn you guys loose to go out and beat the weeds to find that. Trust me, there's lots of resources on the internet that can help you in what's an allowable interview question or not. Shad, how's Springfield handle hiring? You're such a bureaucracy. I have no idea how that even works here.
It all depends on when you're hiring.
Oh.
Like if it's in the summer, it could just be 2 of us.
Yeah.
I interviewed for a position last year, and it was me with a presentation and I think 6 other people, and they had a scoring guide and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
obviously,
well, the scoring guide is really, like I said, this is more of a document to keep people from asking questions they shouldn't ask, for them to understand what their role is in the process. We'll talk about this when we get to that point in the semester, but one of the things that always gets you in trouble on the hiring process is maybe not the questions, it's the follow-up questions where it comes apart.
They weren't allowed any follow-up questions.
Yeah, well, that's wise. That helps a lot. Unless you've got people that really know what they're doing, you probably don't want to allow follow-up questions, because you start out with that question of tell us a little bit about yourself, and they mention that they used to work at some church camp in the summer, and then somebody has a follow-up question like, well, what was that church camp? Oh, you're Catholic too. And then we're off on the races here about how it could be discriminatory one way or the other. But again, so this is really not necessarily about going through and establishing that selection grid on it's more about preparing those people that serve on the committee. So, and by the way, if you're aggressive on the internet, there are a number of nice starting templates on that. In fact, I know a couple of school districts actually put that on their website. So if you're seeking, ye shall find ye enough, you can probably find a good one to start with, even at a public school here in Missouri. So. Okay, so then you got to do one historical court case review and presentation, and we'll do the presentations the last night of class. So that's in December sometime. It's shocking for me to even say the word December, but when we have that last class the first week in December, you're going to present on the law case. Okay, I'm just going to turn you loose on finding one. If you have trouble hitting a roadblock, whistle at me, and I'll give you ones to look at or to go back and specifically look at. But it says identify one federal or state court case that relates to school personnel. And this would actually be a completed case, one that's actually had a ruling on it. Often important cases can be found at the end of school policies. So, I would look up when you're going through and doing that review of those 8 policies, at the bottom of those school policies, it will link oftentimes the court case or a court case that would have impacted the way that policy is written. So that's one good way to find one that may be applicable, is that as you're doing your policy reviews, look at that last section there, and it will often list court cases that would have impacted the way that that policy was written. And then, of course, you can just do a general Google search on finding a school policy or a school personnel court case. And like I said, if you hit a roadblock on that, whistle at me, and I'll put you off in the right direction there. But it says you're going to write a report that summarizes the issue that brought this matter to the court. You're going to report on the court's ruling in that particular case, what the court found that in that school personnel case that would be applicable, and how the court ruling would impact schools. And then it says the final case review should be about 3 to 5 pages long. So you're going to write that paper for me, and then the last night that we have class, I'm going to ask you to present your findings and review of that particular court case the last night of class. You don't have to do a PowerPoint or anything like that. I'll just give you 10-15 minutes to talk through about that particular case that you identified and you dug a little deeper on related to school personnel. Okay, and it could be any aspect of school personnel. It could be discrimination, retaliation. It could be hiring and firing. It could be anything related to school personnel. Okay, anything on that? Okay, then you don't have these yet, and I will send them to you here within the next couple of weeks. Okay, I'll do one of the Columbia court cases, but there's actually a website where I can go through and sort of check pending cases, and I know the Columbia one's a good one that for this class that we could use. But I'm going to send you 2 court cases that are currently being heard right now in Missouri, or the court cases have been filed in Missouri. I'll send you 2 different ones that relate to school law, and I'll send those to you. And I typically send it with like a newspaper article, and if it's in one of the bigger cities, Kansas City, St. Louis, or Columbia, or Joplin, or Springfield, I oftentimes can find a video story from the evening news that I can send you to, so you can see that aspect of it too. You can read the article from the Kansas City Star, but you can also watch the video clip from that. And I'll send you 2 court case law things that are active right now in Missouri. And like it says, you're going to write a review of those cases and from the lens of your local school district policy. So I think I've already told you the Columbia one related to a claim of discrimination for a lady that had applied for the Hickman high school principalship. And so your job is going to be to look at those media reports, either the newspaper reports or the television broadcast news report, and then you're going to pull up your policy that relates to hiring, and you're going to reflect on, if this happened in our district based on our hiring policy, do we feel policy has been followed? So I want you to, it'll be sort of a hinky hybrid here. It's going to be something that comes from a different school district, but I want you to look at it through the lens of your local policy on hiring and see if you feel that based on this report from the media, that the steps that are required by your policy have been followed. And of course, we're assuming the media is correct, which we know is laughable, but that will at least give us a case study that we can look at so that we can, it would be much better if we could sit there and watch the court hearing and see everybody sworn in and with being in jeopardy of going to jail if they're lying, but we're going to use the news media as our filter this time, just so that we can have those court cases. So again, you don't have these yet. I'll send them out. I don't think they'll take you long to complete, so don't panic that way. Usually I suspect you could be done in 20 or 30 minutes after you read the articles and just write up your summary by looking at what it looks like as compared to your local school district policy. So any questions on that? Okay, and then the last thing that you, as far as assignment, is at the very end, either the last night or the last couple of weeks, okay, you're going to just write a self-reflection paragraph or 2. Like it says, within the last 2 weeks of class, you're going to complete a self-reflection document that will identify the most important issues in class from the perspective that related to administrative liability. So these things that we talked about in class, that when we heard them or when we talked about them, you said, man, that really could get me in trouble if we're not doing that right. So that's, I want you to reflect on some things that we've talked about in class that would again be the most dangerous for you. You should reflect on the practical ideas for application that you've come up with over this semester. So if we've talked about some practical ideas on forming a hiring committee, or some practical ideas on how we avoid harassment, discrimination, and retaliation claims, or something like that, then you could also include that in the paragraph. You should also identify and discuss at least one issue related to school personnel that you'll investigate further in your future to prepare you to become school administrator. So obviously we're just flying at 30,000 feet here. We're not going to be able to dig down in the weeds very far, but I want you to at least identify one thing that is going to be on your professional growth agenda to go dig a little deeper related to school personnel. And then the last note there is that this document is to be written in formally casual paragraph format. So again, just looking for your reflection and seeing what you've learned and what you found was most important, and again, what areas for future growth you might look at as far as that's concerned. Okay, so are there any questions on any of the assignments here, or the calendar or due date or anything like that? And again, we're submitting everything using Google Classroom. Are we good?
Good. I think I'm good.
Okay, so I do want to touch just briefly, 15 minutes or so here on harassment, retaliation, and discrimination. We're going to talk about this again next week, but there's one part I wanted to get through because I need you guys to do a little scavenger hunt for me in your district this week, this upcoming week. I need to reshare this. Hold on. Now, this first thing I'm just going to show just briefly, because when I get to switching around, it's sometimes difficult. Okay, is that, and we'll talk about why this website is important. Okay, but if you get into a position of where you're in charge of personnel issues, hiring, firing, discrimination claims, retaliation claims, and things like that. This U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission is a very valuable website. It's one of those ones that you're like, man, I can't imagine that would ever be important to me. But if you're in charge of that, it does become extremely important to you. And we're going to, all school district employees that accept federal funds, which all of ours do, our employees are under the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. That's that whenever we post a job and it says we're an EEOC employer, that documents our obligation to follow the guidelines established by this organization, the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. And so this is something, and I've got the link when I put the spreadsheet up here in a second. But this is I'm just saying, especially if you're a superintendent in a school district and you're the only superintendent, like you're going to be here, Sonia, you're going to be in charge of personnel. You're going to be the administrator that's the lead on this. Okay, that this is where we're getting information to see what is allowable. Now that doesn't mean that we're not obviously also, we might be looking at our we might be looking at our bookkeeper locally may have some special training, and we also, our auditors, depending on what kind of relationship we have with our school auditors that come in annually, they often will provide support on employment issues, and obviously our school district attorneys will do the same thing too. But there are times that we can easily go to this website and find the information that we're looking at. And I'm going to scroll down here to the very bottom, and the parts of this website that I have referred to quite regularly, okay, is that these issues here on these discrimination types, and obviously these are what we call those federally protected categories, categorical protections here, that obviously if we're an EEOC employer, which all public school districts are that accept federal funds, is that age, disability, equal compensation, genetic information, harassment, national origin, pregnancy, color, race, religion, retaliation, sex, and sexual harassment and prohibited practices. I use these links quite regularly when something would come up, and it is sort of a tricky deal here because obviously all of our employees are protected against these types of discrimination, but in Missouri, some of Missouri's protections are more strict or more rigorous than the federal protections. So some of them get a little muddier even than just looking at the federal guidelines. And that's one of the reasons it's so important that you keep your policy manuals updated by whichever organization you get them from, whether you're with MCE and with Tom Mickus and his group, or if you're with MSBA and Kelly Hopkins and the folks up at MSBA and the attorneys up there, whatever organization that you've contracted with on that policy manuals. Because if those policy manuals are updated, that's part of what you're paying MSBA or Tom Mickus and his group to update their policies, is to make sure that they're doing that merging of state policy and law with federal policy and law. So you only have to refer to your local school district policy, that they've done all that heavy lifting for you to make the difference. And if you're enforcing these, it doesn't matter if it's coming from the federal government or coming from the state government, we're required to protect both. And so, but with that said, it is still very helpful to know this website and to at least have it on your radar if issues come up. So and there's more information on there as far as training and things like that, but especially the ones that when I was doing this type of position, these ones on these links here were very helpful. Again, if your policies are updated and things like that, you want to go to that first, but this still would provide additional information. I'll just go through and click on age because it's first here. And it will go through and, of course, I'm 52 now, and it is heartbreaking to see here that the federal definition of age is 40. I thought maybe that was something I was giving myself for my 50th birthday, but if you'll go through and see, it says it forbids age discrimination against anybody who is 40 years or older. So again, that type of information is extremely valuable. If you've got somebody that comes into you that's 39 and is claiming age discrimination, it's helpful to know that it's got to be 40. We'll talk more about this later, but again, I just wanted to at least share that website with you because it's helpful to have that, and especially if you're in charge of personnel, you're going to have to refer to that website occasionally, probably not even regularly, just occasionally. Okay.
Springfield just settled a $116,000 out of court lawsuit for a secretary.
No, yes, I saw that one. Yeah, exactly. And it was an age discrimination claim, wasn't it?
It was. Lynn actually booked my last trip, so I don't know if she had to count stickers and pencils or not, but anyway, but
well, that's actually a good one to share because it's just been resolved. For those of you that don't know what's going on that one, it was basically, I think she worked in the curriculum department. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And anyway, she made a claim that that there was age discrimination, and apparently they tried to remove her once, but she went to the board and the board overturned it, and then she felt like that they were discriminating because she went
They
from
wouldn't let her go somewhere else or something.
Yeah, they removed her from an influential position to counting paper clips and rulers and stuff like that. And so, how much did you say she got, Shad?
$116,000.
And I think she's probably there at retirement age. So that's a nice perk.
Lynn was definitely at retirement age.
Was she? Well, I don't know if that counts. I don't know. She probably can't count that award towards her retirement benefit, but it might get her a nice boat or nice place on the lake somewhere. Okay. So the last thing, and like I said, I wanted to touch on this just a bit tonight because I'm going to have you do a little scavenger hunt for me, is when we talk about school personnel, by far, the worst part of that job is harassment, discrimination, and retaliation, because it is a beast that never gets exhausted and never dies. And just when you think it's died, it rears it flies up like phoenix from the ashes, and swoops down to attack you again. And I don't mean to make light of it, but the point is that when you are working in a central office position and people get into the habit of filing complaints of harassment, discrimination, and retaliation, none of these investigations are simple and easy to do. And then they just start piling on. And I'll share next week, I'll share a couple of my horror stories. But it's one of these things that even when you get that paperwork for that claim of harassment, discrimination, or retaliation, you think this won't take me long to get into it. And even if you think you've resolved it, then the retaliation thing comes back. And so, we'll talk more about it, but again, this is such an important topic. It's the only one we're spending 2 weeks on, although I'm not going to talk about it much tonight. The first thing there is that just that clarification that, of course, we can have harassment, discrimination, and retaliation on students also. Okay, so we can have them, but within our concept of what we're talking about in this class, we're focused only on personnel. So I put this up there just so you'll know that when we talk about the Office of Civil Rights, OCR investigates harassment, discrimination, and retaliation claims on students. So just remember that when we talk about an OCR investigation, that's always students, okay? Because that actually, the Office of Civil Rights, OCR, is part of the U.S. Department of Education, okay? So Well, we've obviously got harassment, discrimination, and retaliation from students. That's investigated by a separate federal agency. What we're focusing on in this class are employees, and enforcement of harassment, discrimination, and retaliation of employees is handled through the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunities Commission. And again, the reason that's the case is because we accept federal funds in the operations of our school district. I guess theoretically, if we accepted no federal funds, then this would not be an issue for us. So if we're a private school that doesn't accept any federal funds in the operation of our school, EEOC is not an issue that we would need to worry about. But again, with employees, the U.S. Equal Opportunity Employment Commission is responsible for enforcing federal laws, and that makes it illegal to discriminate against a job applicant or an employee. So that's where we get at, okay? Now, this actually comes from EEOC, and we'll talk about this in more detail next week. But there are 4 primary parts of risk factors of employers. And by the way, this is just a general employer. It's not necessarily even specific to schools. It's just we have to meet the EEOC requirements, and this is the warning for everyone, is that the first thing we've got to make sure is that we've got a leadership and accountability system. So that is one of the reasons why most school districts of any size have a designated person that is considered the personnel person, the personnel contact person, because as part of that leadership and accountability, it also requires additional training above just what I would call clerical secretarial. MOASBO, I don't know if I know Springfield does, I suspect Willard does too, sends all their people that are involved with the record keeping and the processes involvement in employment. MOASBO is an organization here in Missouri that focuses on professional development for administrators go too, and they're very valuable for administrators, but it allows, for example, if you've got that secretary that's serving in a position as your primary personnel clerk, she can go to professional training at the MOASBO conference that will help prepare that person for that. So that first thing that we got to make sure that when we're dealing with harassment, discrimination, retaliation, and really personnel issues overall, is that we've got this leadership system established that has who's in charge of what, who's got roles over what, and then that accountability system that it's similar to like you'd have a financial audit. You also have to have an audit chain for hiring practices. So in case, just like if somebody was stealing money from the school, the auditor can come in and look at the paperwork to see if money is missing. It's the same thing on harassment, retaliation, and discrimination claims. We've got to have a paper trail that if somebody would ever come in and make a claim of harassment, retaliation, discrimination, that the Equal Opportunities Employment EEOC could come in and do an audit to see if that's done. So we have to establish that area of accountability. And I've been retired from the public schools now for 6 years, and about once every 2 or 3 months, I still have to deal with either a retaliation issue or something from when I was employed either primarily at Dallas County up at Buffalo. It would be something that is, I did the original investigation as part of a claim of harassment, retaliation, and discrimination. And because I was the person that was collecting the data at that time, to this day, and I've been retired for 6 years, every couple of months I'll get a call from somebody up at Buffalo wanting to say, okay, do you remember this? And the answer is not a clue. I don't remember. Well, some of them are more entertaining than others, but in general, I can't recall. But they will have the file packet for me up there at Buffalo. And so one of the administrators will read to me, they'll say, well, you wrote this, and then it will often spark my memory on what we were talking about on that particular case. And so, again, in those cases, what that is often relates to retaliation, meaning something happened here in the district 8 years ago, and I'm still feel like I'm being retaliated against today. And so, but anyway, that's the first thing when we start talking about this EEOC stuff, is the same way we have to have financial audit trail with finances. We have to have an audit trail as far as employment and records and things like harassment, retaliation, and discrimination investigations. The second thing we have to look at is, do we have a policy? Well, obviously all of our districts have that, so that's really not hard for schools to do. We all have an anti-harassment policy that would be required by federal law. And then checklist 3 is a harassment reporting system and investigation. Hopefully, you all are all in compliance with the federal guidelines that at the beginning of the school year, you're doing some sort of professional development, either in person or by some kind of electronic watching a video kind of thing, that you're documenting that everybody knows that we have a system of reporting harassment and retaliation and discrimination, and you also giving them an introduction about how the investigations on those reports are handled. So that's another requirement we have to have. And then that last portion is, well, I jumped ahead of myself. That last portion is that we can actually document this compliance training. Okay, and so how does Willard do its compliance training when you do your back to school training with staff on discrimination, harassment, retaliation?
We tallied up, there is about 4.5 hours of videos to watch.
Okay, and so they have to log in, watch a video, and that checks that they've done it, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
And it's for all, it's not just this, it's for all of those other required trainings.
Yeah.
As well.
Sonia, how about you all up there? How are you handling those back to school training type things?
That's how we do it. We usually get them actually even before school starts.
Yeah, but it's a video system. I forget, is it the one out of Oklahoma? I'm trying to think of the name of that one. That
I don't remember.
I don't remember either. Okay, Shad, how do you're doing it too, aren't you? You're probably logging into what's that system?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We use Safe Schools.
Yeah, Safe Schools. Yeah.
And that was I had 10 compliance things. They tell me 29 minutes, 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And part of it's just reading the like one's just reading the policy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then then check off that you did it. But for the most part,
yeah.
Suicide and discriminatory and sexual harassment and all those were fairly lengthy.
Yeah. Well, if it makes you all feel good, we have to do it here at Missouri State too, because we accept federal funds. We're under the same guidelines that you are on that. So at the beginning of the year, Dr. Quinn and Dr. Finch and I, we all have to log in and watch the videos too. So, but it doesn't have to be videos. I mean, in fact, I'm surprised, Sonia, you're doing it that way. A lot of us still did it the old fashioned way. We would go out there and do the presentation and talk. In fact, I cannot tell you how many times I did it at Buffalo. We felt it was better if I was doing the presentation, because that way if questions came up, we could answer questions. So they would video me doing it just as documentation that had been done. And then of course we'd make everybody sign in when they came into the session. But I would do that session at the beginning of the year. I'd probably do it like 8 times at the beginning of the year, because somebody'd miss a session and they'd have to do it again. But we did it with everybody, obviously, bus drivers and custodians and cooks and teachers and things like that. But again, all 4 of these issues here are risk factors that the Equal Opportunity Employment Commission say you got to have a leadership and accountability system, you got to have a policy, you got to have a reporting system and for investigations thing, and you've got to have this compliance training. And that is, we get that done. And like I said, that's probably not too hard in Missouri schools, because we've known about that and have done that for some time. But it is important to know that into the back of your head. So we'll get into this more detail, but discrimination is based on those federally protected categories. There's one that is tricky for Missouri. I'll talk about that here in a second. But anyway, discrimination, conferring benefit, refusing or denying benefit to, or providing deferential treatment to a person or class of persons in violation of law based on race, color, religion, sex, national origin, ancestry, disability, age, genetic information, or any other characteristic protected by law. By the way, that last one is the tricky one, because Tom Mickus, just at the back to school law workshops that we had here at Missouri State with Tom Mickus and his law group the other day, somebody asked specifically about those other protected categories by law, and somebody asked about, for example, gay, lesbian, transgender, and Tom said it may not be specifically spelled out in law, but you'd be crazy if you discriminated based upon that. And by the way, Tom is a very conservative guy. I mean, he's not one that's wearing a pink wig or anything. He's very conservative, so he doesn't just liberally throw that off. But he's saying that we've got these categories, but there are other categories that even if it's not spelled out by law, you probably would not want to go there to discriminate that. Or the last part there, or based on beliefs such as a characteristic exists. And so it says within the last few months, a clarification has been made that schools should include pregnancy. Pregnancy was not specifically listed before, but now they put pregnancy on that list as a possible discrimination area as part of Title IX. So it's really a different sort of section of federal code as the part that we typically look at as far as defining discrimination, but a recent finding has said that Title IX probably, we're just assuming that Title IX would also keep you from discrimination based on pregnancy. Okay. This next thing is just the click there to the EEOC website, eeoc.gov, and I'm sure we'll be back to it again before the class is over. I want you to watch this very brief video clip. It's only about 6 minutes and it's as dry as dust, but I think it does a good job of explaining what the EEOC does as part of their investigations if you'd ever have one filed to you as far as schools. If you hear the audio of the video, one of you give me a thumbs up because I sometimes have trouble with that. Of course, there it goes.
EEOC, Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. What is the EEOC? The EEOC is an agency that was created to enforce the laws that make it illegal to discriminate against employment applicants or employees based on a person's age, color, disability, genetic information, national origin, pregnancy, race, religion, and sex. What employers are affected? Most labor unions, employment agencies, employees with 15 or more employees, 20 or more employees when it's age discrimination. How does the EEOC work? Step 1, an employee feels discriminated against. Step 2, the employee files a complaint with the EEOC. Step 3, the EEOC investigates the claim with the employer. Step 4, the EEOC addresses the claim with the employer. Is the claim always discrimination? No. Many complaints received by the EEOC are not discrimination, but rather the result of a disciplinary action or an unhappy employee. It is very important for managers to be respectful of their employees and treat everyone the same, regardless of their age, color, disability, genetic information, national origin, pregnancy, race, religion, and sex. Open door policy. An open door policy means that you can come to a management and share your concerns, knowing that they will be listened to, kept confidential if necessary, and addressed without repercussion. It must be an action, not just a policy. A policy alone won't make a difference. It must be in the actions of the management team. The most important thing for an employee is to be able to trust their managers. If they trust the management, then they will usually allow them to resolve the problems at the lowest possible level rather than reach out to the EEOC. Your company. How is your company? Do you feel comfortable sharing concerns with your team of managers? How can you help? Be an example. Be the person that employees can go to with concerns. Keep the information on a need-to-know basis. Working together. Working together resolves issues at the lowest possible level, which protects managers and companies from possible charges from the EEOC. How a claim should be handled within a company. This chart shows steps to resolve complaints of discrimination. It is important for managers to understand the seriousness of a claim of discrimination. It is not to be tolerated in any organization. Step 1. The employee makes a complaint of discrimination. Step 2. Get the complaint to the management or human resources. Step 3. The complaint is thoroughly investigated. Step 4. Appropriate action is taken to ensure there is no discrimination. Case Study 1. James is an employee at XYZ Incorporated. He has been working there for 7 years. He comes to work on time and does his job well. One day, James is in the break room and people are talking about an opening for promotion. James decides to apply, but his management says he is too old. Is this complaint that the EEOC would investigate? Yes, the EEOC would investigate. If the company employs more than 20 people, this is a violation of the ADEA, the Age Discrimination in Employment Act. The EEOC would investigate this charge and appropriate action would be taken with the manager or company if the claim was founded. Case study number 2. Stephanie goes to work and is grumpy all day. She is rude to other employees and customers. Her manager approaches her and calmly asks her what is wrong. She asks Stephanie if she would like to take her break and calm down. Stephanie gets mad and starts yelling and swearing at the manager. The manager asks her to stop, and she gets louder. Stephanie then storms out of work and files a claim with the EEOC stating she was being discriminated against because she is female. Would this case be a case of discrimination? No, however, the EEOC may investigate. When filing a claim with the EEOC, employees generally will make themselves innocent when explaining what happened. This is why the EEOC investigates the claim. It is very important that managers are always respectful in the way they treat their employees. Managers also want to be consistent. If you as a manager have a situation that becomes volatile with an employee, it is always a good idea to take a few minutes to write notes of the situation in case you have to defend your actions in the future. Let's review. The EEOC is an agency that was created to enforce the laws that make it illegal to discriminate against employment applicants or employees based on a person's age, color, disability, genetic information, national origin, pregnancy, race, religion, and sex.
That'll be enough of that. Like I said, I know it was dry as dust, but the key point is, there are several key points there, is that first of all, the EEOC they're going to file a complaint. Let me go back and share that with you, how to do that, just in case you want to file a complaint. It's a very simple process to file a complaint with the EEOC. When you go to the EEOC website here, looky there, it's at the very top where it says file a charge of employment discrimination. You click on that link right there and the fun begins, okay? And so it is not a hard process for an employee to do. As the video said, ideally, an employee would, if they felt like they were discriminated against, would go through the school district process for filing a grievance or a claim of retaliation, discrimination, or discrimination or retaliation or harassment. You would hope they would use the local policy, but they do not have to. And what I have found in many cases is that by the time they do this, they are so stinking mad at the school and everybody about it that they go to the EEOC. With that said, I've participated in several EEOC investigations and I found that they've been fair. So I don't know that I fear them. The one thing I will say is that when they come in, again, just remember my admonition. It's just like if we were having a financial audit, we would need to have all our paperwork in a row and figured out. It's the same thing if the EEOC is coming in and investigating a claim of harassment, discrimination, or retaliation. They're going to expect you to have all your paperwork in a row. And that's one of the reasons I have this assignment where you have to establish these hiring committees. If a hiring decision is made, and we do not have things in place like these policies and procedures on how we use a hiring committee, then that is not going to be looked upon kindly by the EEOC because it allows wiggle room for discrimination. You know, it's similar. You know, I know Garrett, you're down there at Willard that has a number of different elementary schools. Well, if we use one hiring practice at one elementary school in Willard and we use a different hiring practice at another elementary in Willard, that can just set you up for trying to explain why the process is different than one building than another, especially when it comes to claims of things like discrimination. And so, so we want to make sure that we have all that paperwork in order when the EEOC comes to investigate. We'll talk about it more, but again, it's just like a financial audit. We want to have our receipts, just like we'd have receipts on reimbursements. We'd want to make sure that we have all this paperwork in order that can help defend the school district when it comes to a claim of discrimination or retaliation. But again, the point is the EEOC is the one that's going to investigate it. If you have a claim brought against you as a school. Then harassment. Okay. I don't want to take all my good stories away, but I'll burn one tonight. Okay. So I up at Buffalo, we have a guy and a gal that are involved in a romantic relationship in a trailer on school grounds, and they're not married. They're married, but they're not married to each other, if you know where I'm going. Okay. And so we have documentation from surveillance camera videos of these two school district employees going to this location at the same time together. And so this has been reported as a discipline type issue, not as a harassment, retaliation, discrimination complaint, because this was actually reported to us by another custodian on one of the campuses, that their concern was that they were having to do all the work because these other people were fooling around in the trailer. Okay. By the way, these are fun interviews to be involved in. Anyway, so CSI does not prepare you for this. So anyway, so you're having these discussions with this man and this woman that are not wanting to be 100% honest about what's going on, and the only surveillance video you have is them going into a same location at the same time, and so you really don't have any evidence that something, well, to be candid, something sexual was going on. So you don't have any evidence of that. It's just they're going to the same location and there's idle chit chat about it. So you're handling it as far as a disciplinary action, that they're supposed to be working not in this trailer together, and so you're handling it that way. So you deal with it as a disciplinary action, really not even looking at the harassment, retaliation, discrimination part of the investigation. This is a discipline thing, okay? Months and months later, okay, you talk to each one of them, they deny in the original investigation that anything romantic was going on. No, we're fine. We just went out there and we're drinking coffee and smoking cigarettes, and it wasn't that, but it was something like that. I mean, it was just basically we're just sitting out there goofing around or stuff, not any romantic thing. Well, then months and months and months later, it all blows up again, and someone is the scorned one. I don't know if it was the man was the scorned one or the woman was the scorned one, but one of them was scorned, and all of a sudden now we've gone from there was nothing going on to, yeah, something was going on, and we didn't tell you it was going on. And the part of it is that if I had not taken notes from that original investigation that I didn't think had anything to do with harassment, well, I may have thought it, I just didn't have any information to prove that something was going on. And so you had to investigate it just as not doing their job. And but then, like I said, months later, you have to go back and sort of backtrack. And so I was having a good day that day because I had made both of them sign. I had transcribed their narrative for them, and I had them read it and make any changes that they had to it. And I had both of them sign it where they had told me that nothing was going on. And so when it came time to deal with this 6 months later, as far as a claim of harassment, it helped because we had that information. The point is, and it was just briefly mentioned in that video, is that you're keeping records on all of these interactions that you're having with personnel, because you have something that seems to be minor now, you have no idea what additional information is going to come out down the road, that your original data collection is going to be important as far as defending yourself, as far as a school district is concerned, on claims of EEOC and how you hadn't handled it and things like that. Because, I mean, that could have been turned around. You know, the woman in that case could have said, well, I told Dr. Turner 6 months ago that, you know, Creepy Ed was after me, and then it could have been something that could have been a great liability for the school district. But like I said, luckily I was having a good day and I got it all signed off on, and it didn't happen. But again, the point of harassment there is it's a form of discrimination, and that occurs at work or school environment, that when it becomes to permeate with intimidation, ridicule, insults sufficiently severe or pervasive enough that it would unreasonably alter the employment or educational environment. Behaviors that could constitute illegal harassment include, but are not limited to, things based on act of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, ancestry, disability, age, genetic information, or other characteristics. It could be things based on things like graffiti, displays of written materials, pictures or electronic images, name calling, teasing, taunting, insults, derogatory remarks and slurs, jokes, gestures, threats, intimidation, or hostile acts, physical acts of aggression, assaults, violence, theft, or damage of a property. And of course, if this harassment was going towards students, it would be handled by the Office of Civil Rights. But if it was being reported on an employee, then it goes through the EEOC. Then retaliation, I don't want to really touch on that this week because that's going to be one of my bread and butters next week, because retaliation is, again, that's a tricky one. But here's your assignment for next week, is between now and when I see you all again next Monday, I want you to get a copy of your district harassment, discrimination, and retaliation policy. It's typically one policy. Garrett, do you know if you guys are on MSBA or MCE? Which one are you on?
Primarily MSBA.
Okay.
We have a few MCE policies, but we're revising and getting those out as quickly as possible.
Okay. Well, MSBA is all together. Chad, I know you're with MSBA. Sonia, do you know if you're MSBA or MCE?
No, we're MCE.
You're MCE. Okay. So you may have more than one. I forgot.
I printed them off.
Okay. Good deal.
Earlier tonight, and
Okay.
I think maybe it's in 2.
Yeah. So
no, actually, the regulation is more descriptive.
Yeah.
Than the policy.
But does the policy, what's the title of the policy? Do you have it laying there in front of you?
Prohibition against harassment, discrimination, and retaliation.
Perfect. They're good. That's the one you need. So you're set. So it used to be in 2 separate ones, but I'm glad they've got it back in one on MC. So just make sure you've read, like I said, review it prior to class, because I really want to focus on that next week. But I wanted you guys to have a chance to look at your local harassment, discrimination, retaliation policy before we talked about it. So that's your assignment for next week, is to get that policy. You haven't found it yet, read through it before we talk next Monday, and then we'll dig more deeper into that next week. So we're done. Any questions? Okie dokie. Well, Chad, you get better, and I'll see you all next Monday. If anything comes up or any questions, whistle at me, and I'll see you all next Monday at 5:15. Okay.
Thanks, Dr. Turner.
Okay, go ahead, Garrett.
Hey, so I'm working on internship as well.
Yep.
There's a board meeting that I am going to need to attend at some point. Aurora is what I had planned to go attend. It's on Monday nights. Is there any particular, it's first Monday of the month is when they do that. Any